But can you just give us a few statistics about business messaging and a bit more background information? Anything you have, go for it.
Sure. I mean, the presentation says I'm from Infobip, but I'm actually from Juniper Research, so all the data that I say today...
We just recruited her.
Yeah, we're colleagues. Yeah. All the data I say is from Juniper Research, so I just want to make that just clear, just in case. In terms of kind of the business messaging market, so obviously we anticipate this year there'll be over 2 trillion SMS messages sent, but 2 years ago, SMS made up about 95% of the market, just over, in terms of the proportion of business messaging traffic. But you've already heard today that the growth of SMS is slowing, or even plateauing, or even declining in some markets. And then we anticipate by 2028, SMS will account for about 65% of business messaging. And that's why you'll see kind of RCS that we've spoken about all day today, and then OTT as well, really coming to the fore. But I know we say there's, the number of businesses, I know James wrote in the kind of description of the session, there's 300 million businesses, but that's quite a daunting task when we're talking about how we're going to get all of these businesses to adopt business messaging. But I think from our perspective, initially, I think we need to zone into the B2C really, the B2C companies that will likely be the ones adopting business messaging, at least from a generic point of view, if we're just averaging out. And from that, there's about 120 million B2C companies this year, and then we anticipate that to go to about 130 by 2028. So there's still a very big market, addressable market that we should focus on. But I think just even narrowing down the addressable market is one of the first steps I think we should look to do before we then decide what channel is important where, what use case. And I know Pedro kind of gave a really good example at the start in the keynote talking about demographics, geography, and use cases. That's you'll have one conversation with one company, even one department in one company, and then you might have to have a completely different conversation for the next one. So I think the first step would be narrowing down the number of businesses.
I totally agree, because at the end of the day, we care about the channel. Businesses don't. They care about the outcome.
For sure.
And they ultimately do not care how the outcome is delivered, as long as it's done in a way which does not, let's say, annoy consumers along the way.
Exactly. It's getting that sort of kind of cost-performance ratio right. In terms of from an enterprise perspective, like we speak about, they might not even know what RCS is. They might just, if you're not in like the technical department of a company, obviously the technical department might be dealing with all the ins and outs of RCS, but if you're in that company using it, you might not even know that you're actually using RCS for business messaging, but that's just an example. But in terms of kind of the cost-performance ratio, an enterprise necessarily might not care what channel they're using. It's more, what can they gain? What's the benefit? And what's the experience for the end user as well?
Fantastic. Mario, come to you. So your role with Tele2, you manage all of the business messaging for Tele2 Group. Can you just talk about your journey into business messaging, and when did Tele2 as a whole really start to understand that actually we can make some money, increase customer stickiness, etc., from working in business messaging, and how did you go about doing that?
Actually, this was a very long story, and you have been there. So, yeah, I mean, we have a person who was here on the scene, Anders Karlsson, who always believed in messaging, right? So he was a precursor of messaging in the world of operators in Sweden. But then suddenly we started to see that, okay, messaging is not only about wholesale. Messaging is also about the business. It is a tool for the business to engage with the customer, to sell, to deliver important message, to do, to help the business to grow, right? And and then we realized, okay, we need to go to the market and how to do it, right? Telecom operators never used this opportunity before. We were more into P2P. So what we were lacking integrator. How do we integrate with the business? And then we found the CPaaS. It was very early on. It was 2016, right? When we actually chose the CPaaS platform and started to use it to engage with the business customer. And then we also productify the messaging for the business, because before the message was not the product for them. So there was lots of effort, and lots of effort from the sales perspective, lots of effort from delivering this message to our customers, right? And I think now we are in the same journey in terms of RCS. I mean, everything is about education, everything is about building, and I think, and of course, as David said, I very much liked it, that actually SMS is a premium product. We owe it. We actually, now in Tele2, we protect it very well. We have very good security, but our customer maybe wants something more.
Fantastic. And that leads me straight into Jelena and Infobip, because you just happen to be that partner Mariola was referring to. So logic would dictate out there, if you walk onto the streets of Kista and Sweden as a whole, practically every single person, it doesn't matter, man, woman, child, everybody would know at least one of the brand names of the mobile operators. But no one, even with 3,500 plus employees, no one unfortunately has heard of Infobip, no one has heard of Cinch or GMS or anyone else, practically, again, just within the industry. Where do you see Infobip's role in working with the operators? Because on the one hand, operators could technically do all of this themselves. So where's the benefit for mobile operators globally from picking up with companies such as Infobip?
Well, I think Pedro said today that we are sitting comfortably in the back, enjoying our role, by enabling both operators and brands to do it, because I think operators have a huge responsibility when they are out there and they have a series of legal set and rules they have to comply with in order to provide such service. It's a little bit easier for companies like us. We are just, let's say, technological provider. But I think the biggest role of companies like ours is education, both markets, brands, and the operators. Because as you said, I think I spoke about business messaging with everyone in this room at one point, but and we are usually discussing technicalities, throughput, pricing, delivery rates, that sort of stuff. But when you're talking outside of this messaging bubble, people don't know. And they think actually that business messaging is delivering a message, which is partially true, but it's way more. And we are the ones, along the operators, who should educate them that it's a strategic communication approach that companies should use if they want to convey their messages, brand values and key information to the users. They can use various channels, but the sole purpose is to build strong relationship with the user, to foster loyalty with them, and ultimately drive business growth. But I think there's one misconception here as well, because usually when people are talking about business messaging, they think it's reserved for big brands. But most of the market's actually not big brands, it's small and medium companies, which don't have resources actually to waste.
Well, can I ask you on that, is Infobip and other big players who have a leading responsibility in the business messaging space globally, what are you doing to engage with the smaller and medium-sized companies? Because on the face of it, I know clearly the larger revenues and possibly margins are going to come from your big clients, but how are you addressing the SMB market?
I think if you count the number of RCS workshops we held in the last 3 years, I think you would know how much we are investing in promoting services that we believe in. So RCS is one of them. But I have to say it's hard. As the previous panelist said, sometimes even operators are asking, what is RBM? So it's a long journey.
Jelena opened the door to education, and there is no better place to help with the education side of things than the Mobile Ecosystem Forum. Nick, from your perspective, you've straddled both worlds. You're with the Mobile Ecosystem Forum, but you ran the Calera piece in Europe before as well. So you have been in the shoes of an aggregator and running that part of it. What's the role of a trade organisation in all of this?
I think the main thing that you mentioned there was the education. I think you mentioned about the walking down the street and talking to people in the street who perhaps haven't heard of Infobip and Cinch, but I would think nobody's ever heard of RCS either, or RBM, and what are you talking about? But I would expect everybody's heard about SMS. So I think there's a big piece of education out to consumers potentially. That's not necessarily the role of ours, the trade role, but I think what our role as part of MEF is to educate the market. Going back to my role, I suppose, at Kalira, where I was, heading up the CPaaS, if you like, sales and marketing and all that stuff. We had a real job, A, getting our name out there, but B, educating businesses what this was all about as well. So one of the things that I was talking to a couple of people in the break about, one of the things that we will be doing at MEF is trying to bring brands together with carriers, with CPaaS providers, with research organizations to try and educate the brands out there as well. Because again, if I talk to most CMOs, they'll know Twitter or X, whatever it's called now. They'll know Instagram, etc. They'll know SMS, but they'll have never, they look blankly at you when you talk about RCS. So I think part of our role is kind of that education piece. There's many more kind of elements to it as well, but I think that's what we're going to try and do.
Fantastic. Elisha, you've got a fantastic high-level overview globally of messaging and other areas, because Juniper Research, you do more than messaging at Juniper Research. So you're not as close to it as Jelena or Mariola or Nick in many ways, and certainly myself as well. From a very neutral perspective, we look at TV ads, for example, in the UK, and mobile operators make such a big deal about 5G data. Now, it's very understandable. So I attended a Comphone event last week in Switzerland, and they were mentioning that across their whole network globally, the roaming network globally, 96.7% of everything from all their operator clients globally was data. 0.6 was SMS, and the remainder, I think was that 2.7, was voice. So what, from your perspective, could or should mobile operators be doing? I'm talking globally now, to actually possibly promote business messaging in the simplest form, so we may actually even see TV ads.
Yeah, it's a tough one, because obviously at Juniper we are a neutral party, and we hear all the other we hear everyone else's kind of perspectives, but from our clients are the messaging aggregators and the operators, for example, and we don't always hear the opinions of the enterprise. So even from our perspective, we might be missing that link, and that's why we have conversations often with Infobip and likewise to get that intel as well. But in terms of the education, and you could even put it in a way that the people that manage these different operators, they're also consumers. Do you know what I mean? So even getting that education to a consumer is vital, but the operator is the best person to do that, like you say. But in terms of, we've heard today, and in Tim's presentation, it was very informative, but there were still questions that couldn't be answered, and RCS is likely going to be rolled out, staggered probably, the end of this year. So how can we expect operators to prepare for that? How can we expect messaging aggregators, for example, to prepare for that if us in the market still don't necessarily know 100% how it's going to happen, or where it's going to happen, and when it's going to happen? And how can you prepare marketing material, collateral marketing campaigns, for example, to educate the consumer that this is coming, or these are the capabilities? It's difficult, and obviously I can say, oh, well, this person should do this and this person should do that, but in terms of kind of actually making that happen, it's very tricky, and I think it's, we've seen it here today in the forefront, still not having all the information, maybe less than 6 months before something's going to launch. How can we expect the market to then educate if the people in the market don't know 100% of the facts?
Okay, so we've heard and we know that SMS is a trusted value channel globally, approximately, depending on who you ask, over 5 billion unique subscribers. probably, how many SIM cards out there in the world?
Just under 10 billion SIMs,
10 billion
and then
SIMs.
just under 6 unique subscribers. So
Right.
massive market. But we've already heard today about how some people have the opinion where SMS is eventually going to go. Some people have the opinion where nothing can necessarily replace SMS because of its familiarity, and obviously RCS is getting there with its ubiquity. But in terms of the short term, SMS, we don't see it going anywhere. Obviously, it might get less important, but I think in terms of getting, we're here to talk about how we can get enterprises to adopt business messaging. I think SMS is still a good place to do that because it is very familiar, it's very ubiquitous. And sometimes, I think it's been mentioned already today, sometimes it's often just getting that conversation started first. So use an SMS to get the conversation started, and then you can advance the capabilities and give more education to the enterprises or the end consumers. But SMS I think, is still a good stopgap to the richer messaging.
Yeah, I think the key is carrier-based channels that are reliable, because there are other channels who have outages now and again that take the whole thing out.
Yes,
Millions of people are without. If you are a business relying on just one channel and you lose that, game over.
It's all about that customer satisfaction. And I know at Juniper we are about to launch a customer survey in terms of, it is from a UK perspective, so it might not be relevant to the Nordics, but a consumer's perspective and satisfaction on their operators. And the findings that we're seeing at the moment is, the prime is the services, not having the ability to access services like PayFor, for example, is the biggest kind of reason why they might have a negative experience, or they might decrease their satisfaction to an operator. So it's definitely key not to inhibit the user experience is definitely key.
Fantastic. So if we peel it all back, we talk about collaboration a lot, obviously within trade associations such as MEF, but also there is responsibility among the operator community to do that. And it's great to see here in Sweden the collaborative approach taken with business messaging and RBM. Mario, can you tell us a little bit more about what is going on with all 4 operators here in Sweden with regards to business messaging and RBM and your approach?
Actually, I think that we have a fantastic collaboration, all 4 operators. We are meeting frequently. We discuss approach, of course, within the framework that is allowed to discuss. We don't discuss pricing or anything. And actually, I would like to say thank you to MEF for moderating those meetings. It's been done for a long time now. And I think that this leads us to maybe creating an environment which is easier, for example, with aggregator to work with. Hopefully, we have similar type of agreements. We are doing similar type of framework for, let's say, registration, for brand. And also, we are planning to now launch the web page, all 4 operators. So there is lots of things that are ongoing. Now we have 4 operators on RCS. So yeah, that was this period where we were just 2 and that we were 3. So of course it was much more difficult to grow this channel. But hopefully now with 4 operators and with this good collaboration, we will be able to move on and achieve some success. And I think that the willingness is there.
Fantastic. Jelena, can we come to you? Can we talk about the whole issue of trust? That word is so used, by myself included, so many times. But in real terms, it was only in recent years when, certainly in the UK and a couple of other countries I know well, we started to see literally front page news on people who were defrauded, and the bearer channel, the medium that ultimately led to the fraud is SMS. So there's so many people going around saying SMS and other channels, you can't trust them, you can't trust them. And this distrust then pushes people and businesses into the arms of non-carrier-based channels. What do you think we as an industry should do, and what is Infobip's role in this, about whether you think about restoring trust, re-establishing trust, or protecting the trust that's there? What are you doing with that?
Can I reuse my first feedback education? I mean, it's natural that with a channel where a lot of revenue was involved, you'll gain certain players with suspicious behavior, let's say. I mean, we see that in every country in the world, so it's kind of natural. And when you say they switch to other channels, we see that now on other channels as well. But brands don't have time to deal with this. So they need someone who can simplify things for them. And unfortunately to say, because education is an expensive thing, if we want to keep business messaging under, let's say, controlled channels, we have to do it. There's no other way. I mean, brands were communicating with their users from the beginning of the time. So we are not inventing a wheel. But we are trying to help them do it in a controlled and efficient manner. And this is where they gain trust in us, that we will tell them, it's better not to use it here because, I don't know, in 2 months you'll probably hit a wall. So I think that's the only thing. And I have to admit, it was way, way easier 10 years ago. But then everybody were asking what A2P SMS is. But it is what it is. And where there's a lot of revenue involved in certain area, whichever it is, a lot of fraudsters come in. So we either drop the topic or we fight against it.
I was just going to say, around the trust element, I just think that, you know, with RCS as the example, we've talked a lot about that today. When you have that verification there, hopefully that goes away. Now, we're discussing on behalf of the ecosystem, on behalf of our members with Google and others, you know, there's some fraud that seems to be creeping in the P2P channel now. However, I think with the right kind of safeguards in place, we can kind of even cut that out. But certainly from an A to P perspective, I think having that brand verification. I remember a couple of years ago talking to banks, and they were saying, if you could provide me a channel that when I send a message on it, I can prove to my customers that's from me, I will pay a lot of money for that. And you know, that's different to an email, it's different to an SMS, because you know, it's very easy to spoof them, whereas it shouldn't be, and it won't be within RCS.
Yeah, we talked a lot about education, and regulators need to be educated as well, because again, a very, very small part of what they are involved in naturally going to be business messaging, if that's the same for mobile operators. And we've got to understand that and educate. And I think something else that I've only heard of recently, in a great way of explaining it, is that, because I keep asking, why are regulators so focused on the voice world? We look in the US with the FCC, focused on robocalling, and SMS and what's coming now with the rules and regulations and do not originate in the US starting September the 3rd, was really much of an afterthought and came after. Why was that? And that's what I've been hearing is very simple, because in the traditional mindset of a regulator, voice is telecoms, but SMS, and never mind anything else we're talking about, RCS business messaging, WhatsApp, Viber, Telegram, Line, Kakao, WeChat, etc., that they're viewed as being data. So that really hit home with me, and something that really impacted me, because that was a good explanation of why perhaps regulators aren't on it as much. But good to see regulators starting to get a bit more involved, thanks to trade associations such as MEF.
Great, thank you. I think we're getting the signals, if that's okay.
It is game over. I'm looking at my watch. We've got 1.5 minutes, I know. I'm very, very careful on this for past. Mariola, this day today is really based around the mobile operators. It's hosted by a mobile operator. Your final word from you on what you think we as an industry should be doing to better engage with the folks out there to tell them about all of this?
As we all talk about, I think it's a lot about the trust. The public must regain the trust in messaging. If this will be RCS or if this...
Do you think the public has lost it?
Yes, we see it in many ways on SMS, right? Public has been defrauded. Businesses have been defrauded.
So businesses that previously sent a lot of traffic through you are now sending less or no?
Yeah, we think so. And then we also see in statistics, for example, consumer is afraid to open the message. So of course, if business understands the consumer will never open the message, they will never use a message as a channel. So I think the main thing is to regain the trust, and maybe this verification that you're talking about with RCS It's very important as part of the trust, but I also think that we all in the industry have a very high responsibility to protect our networks, to monetize on every SMS, to have anti-fraud tools, and to make
To
sure...
monetize responsibly.
It is monetized responsibly.
I couldn't say that
exactly.
as MEF, but I can now as not as MEF.
Exactly, and to make sure that we really protect the consumer and that we protect the business. Of course, the operator have very high responsibility, but I think that the whole ecosystem, inclusive aggregators, should bear the same responsibility.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So at the heart of all this, of course, are our phone numbers. Most of us are increasingly keeping our phone numbers longer and longer. So number intelligence is supremely important, and that's where XConnect comes in. So I'd like to thank our speakers. You've got Jelena from Infobip, Elisha from Juniper, Nick from MEF, and Mariola from Tele2. Thank you very much.
Excuse me, I just would like to use 1 second of the time. So after the next fantastic presentation of OSA, that I hope now works, we will be going for lunch, and we will be going to Tele2 restaurant on the right-hand side. We will need to, you can get out and go to the restaurant, but when you will like to come in, so grab one of us with Tele2 card, and we will let you in back.
Thank you, Mariola.